So up to this point, with Steele at home, I know the floor is a little cold. You've been working with him on a slip leash. The reason why we do that is we do start every dog on a slip leash until they understand leash communication. We've talked about using the leash for leash pressure. We've talked about using the leash for corrections, and he's beginning to understand both of those. But what we want is for it to be a little bit clearer for him because he had a long history. He's a young dog, but the majority of his life that he was on the leash, he was pulling into the leash. We were pulling on that leash before he came in for training. So we want to make sure that he has a really clear understanding of the leash communication, using it appropriately and deliberately to teach him what it is we want him to do and what he's not supposed to do. And we've established that with him now. He's got an understanding. He understands corrections. He understands leash pressure. He understands all of that. So that being said, we have started using here the prong collar. So you might have seen it in a couple of videos of him training, and he's wearing it here today. And what I want to do is talk about how things are going to be a little bit different when we start using the prong collar at home with him. So the prong collar is a more aversive tool than the slip leash, which means it's going to be more uncomfortable when we apply our leash communications, meaning when we use our pressure, when we use our corrections. So that being said, it's important to understand that whatever we do with the leash now is going to be amplified. So if we're using the leash inappropriately, we are amplifying that inappropriate nonsense communication through the leash. So we want to make sure that we're still being extremely deliberate when we use our prong collar to communicate exactly what we want. The other thing is we don't have to use as much force when we apply things like leash pressure or corrections. We can be very delicate with these things and still get the information across clearly to him, which is why we want to use these types of tools, because it allows us to be very specific and clear with what we expect from our dog. It's kind of like when you're cooking and you're cutting something up, you can be a lot more accurate with a sharp knife than with a dull knife. And with a dull knife, you have to push a lot harder to get it to go through. So with this, we want to use the prong collar because it's going to allow us to be a lot more accurate, a lot more specific, and a lot clearer with what we want. However, even though the prong collar is uncomfortable for him, if we're using it inappropriately, if we're allowing him to pull into it, he can still get desensitized to it. And that's what we don't want to have happen. Because if he's desensitized to the prong collar, there's nowhere else where we can go, right? So we want to make sure that we're not desensitizing him to this. We want to use it very deliberately. You're going to make a mistake here and there. It's not the end of the world. But understanding that if we're being too hard on it, if we're using it with too much force, if we're using it incorrectly, it's going to become very muddied and inappropriate. And he can even become frustrated or shut down. So we want to be very specific with how we use it. When we use it appropriately, it does help him be actually more enthusiastic about doing those behaviors, because now there's a higher price to pay for failing to do behaviors or doing them incorrectly. So that being said, we're going to do a little bit of healing. And if he makes a mistake, I'm going to give him a leash correction with the prong collar. And that way I just want you to see kind of what it looks like a little bit differently. So we're going to start with a free heel. And again, I'm not correcting for him lagging. Good. Heel. If he gets out of position, I'll give him a correction, but he's actually doing a really good job staying in position. Heel. Heel. So I'm going to do a sharp turn. If he gets out of position, I'm going to correct him. No. Heel. So that was very subtle. He was out of position, but I wanted to be consistent with what I'm expecting from him. Good. So, no, heel. tangled. He's doing a very good job staying in position. He's going to have a very nice heel. Heel. And I would want to start doing more heeling outside. We've done quite a bit of heeling outside, but it's pouring rain right now. So we're utilizing the benefits of having an indoor training space. Heel. So I'm going to give him a command to go into the down position. If he doesn't do it, I'm going to apply gentle leash pressure. Down. I'm going to do it with my foot, but I'm going to be very careful to be gentle about it. Good. No. So we're going to give him a correction. Down. So we're going to do this again. Free. Down. Good, Bowie. Very good. No. Down. And we have to remember to be very specific and clear with our corrections. You heard me give that no marker. I got my leash where I needed it to be. I gave him that correction and then reminded him what he was supposed to do. So we're going to do this again. Free. Heel. We're going to center ourselves. Yeah, he's tired. He's stretching all day. Down. And the thing is, like, when it comes to things like corrections and when we need to correct the dog, what we're aiming for is a 90% success rate, right? I want my dog to be successful 9 out of every 10 repetitions of whatever skill we're working on. I want my dog heeling correctly at least 90% of the time. And then from there, we're going to start to challenge them. So if I'm going to put him in a down stay, I'm going to tell him down. I'm going to walk away. And then if he's able to maintain a good down stay, I'm going to go ahead and go back and reward him. If he makes a mistake, I'll give him a correction. Now, the reason why it's really important to do the corrections accurately in the early stages, right? Because I've talked about this with our trainers, is that when the dog does something wrong, we can just provide that leash pop as the punishment for the behavior. But it's important that in those early stages that we establish the marker to tell our dog that you did this wrong, now that leash pop is coming, right? So when my dog does something wrong, I give them that negative marker, that no. I give them that leash pop afterwards. So they know that that word means that the pop is coming. So here, now that we're doing stays where we're able to walk away from our dog, so we say down, we walk away from our dog, and now I'm upwards of 10 feet away. If he makes a mistake, yeah, I could use the leash and pop him from over here, but I don't know if it's going to be a very effective pop. And honestly, if he makes a mistake, he's probably going to come towards me, which is going to create slack in the leash anyways. But I can tell him that word no, and then I can take my time to collect my leash as I need it, give him that pop, bring him back to where he was supposed to be, remind him what he was supposed to do, and then go into our next repetition. So I don't necessarily want him to make mistakes, but if he does, I'm going to say that negative marker. I'm going to get my leash to where I need it to be. If I can give a correction from here, I will. But if I need to shorten that leash, I'll come in, shorten the leash, give him that correction, put him back in the position right where I left him, right? Because this is where I want him to do his downstay. If he failed to do the downstay here, we're going to do it here until he gets it correct. This applies to everything, like the place bed, right? When our dog breaks their place command, the place bed doesn't move. We put them back on the place bed where they were. So we have to apply that same concept. We just don't have a marker on the floor like a place bed to tell us where our dog was supposed to be. So we have to kind of remember, hey, I put my dog down here, roughly like 3/4 of the way through the room. And so same thing applies when we do our sit stays, is if my dog is here and they make a mistake, I'm going to bring them back to where they were supposed to be, remind them what they were supposed to do, and then go into the next rep without rewarding. Now he's doing a really good job, so I'm going to reward him because he's being a very good boy. I'm going to tell him down. If we are working on duration, I know, he's shivering because the floor is cold. If we're working on duration and my dog makes a mistake at 30 seconds and I was planning on doing 5 minutes, well, I'm not going to put him back in that position and then reward him again. But what I might do is maybe shorten my goal a little bit. So if he broke at 30 seconds, I might say, hey, my goal for the next one is 25 seconds, right? If my dog is breaking at 30 seconds, I would say that aiming for 5 minutes is probably not a good way to go. But I want my dog being able to stay in that position successfully 90% of the time. So 9 out of 10 repetitions. Now, that being said, that might change as we go further. But the thing is, like, we shouldn't be pushing our dog so far that they're making mistakes. All right. Now, he's been a really good boy. He hasn't made a lot of mistakes, so you haven't seen a lot of opportunities for me to correct him, but that's a really good thing. I wanted to make this video so you could see what we're talking about with the prong collar. If you have questions, call me, text me anytime. I want to do a lesson with you before I have you start using the prong collar at home. All right. So get the opportunity, schedule that with me, and yeah, he's doing great. Free. Heel. Good boy.